So welcome to Lunch with the League. My name is Julie Rodewald. I'm the Voter Services Director for the League of Women Voters of San Luis Obispo County. This is part of our effort to encourage voters to register, learn, and then vote. Just a reminder, the League is a nonpartisan organization, which means that we do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. A couple of housekeeping items. Please submit your questions in Q&A. The session is being recorded and it will be available on our website and our YouTube channels. I wanted to also bring to your attention a couple of educational resources that we have on our website, which is lwvslo.org. You can find upcoming candidate forums. You can find the replays for the candidate forums that have already been conducted, and you can find the pros and cons for the state propositions. And then on Voters Edge, which we encourage everyone to use, you can find candidate information for both state and local candidates, as well as information on state and local ballot measures. So those are some resources that are available to you to get more informed about this election. But today we're going to be talking about securing the vote and what the building blocks are to ensure a safe, fair, and accurate election. Certainly our special guest, Elaina Cano, the San Luis Obispo County Clerk Recorder, needs no introductions. Everybody probably knows she was appointed last November to fill the remainder of the term and then was elected in June for the 4 years that will be starting next year, the 4-year term starting next year. And we really want to thank Elaina for coming today. It's E-22. It's an incredibly busy time in the office, a lot of moving parts right now. So we appreciate her taking the time to be with us to talk about this important subject. Elaina, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. And thanks to everybody who's watching and listening. You are absolutely right. And this is a very, very busy time. But I am thankful that I get an opportunity to speak before you and the League and hopefully provide some much needed information and answer any questions that anybody may have at the end of all of this. So starting with laying the foundation, there's a few questions that I have received over the past few months in regards to our voter registration maintenance and list upkeep. And we now have a system in place that's called VoteCal. It's hosted by the Secretary of State's office, and it is considered our system of record. All information, anytime there's a new voter registration, anytime there is an update to the registration via the DMV or through the United States Postal Service, that information is provided back up to VoteCal, and then we receive the information almost instantaneously. Anytime any voter decides to fill out one of the paper voter registrations, we then input that information that we have received from the voters, and then it again almost instantaneously gets sent right up to VoteCal. So that process happens on a day-to-day basis all day long, that we are looking into the messages that we receive from VoteCal, anything that has come in from the DMV, anything that has come through the National Change of Address system, all of that is being maintained on a day-to-day basis. So our staff is very focused on that VoteCal process constantly. As far as our voting system, California has the most stringent certification requirements for our voting system, which goes far and above what the federal standards are. It is a very, very lengthy process in which vendors will need to apply and then go through months and months of testing with the state standards until it passes. And then once it does pass, then the various counties can apply to purchase this new voting system. And then we too have to go through a type of certification that ensures the security and of the voting system in and of itself. And so some of those security measures, as far as when we purchase the voting system, we have to ensure that we have all of our chain of custody processes written down and provided and approved by the state. We have to have 24-hour video surveillance on the system and any of our ballot on demand printers. We have to go through a lot of different documentation that we need to provide to the state prior to even being up and running and preparing for any type of an election.
So Elaina, I have a question for you on that. With the voter list maintenance with VoteCal, which came in after I retired, does that preclude someone from having multiple voter registrations within the state? So in different counties?
Yeah, so we will get notified. It's called, I think we refer to it as push-pull. Like if we find that somebody is registered in a different county, we will get that notification to release them from our county and push them into theirs. Or if it appears that there is a voter that has very, very similar information, and again, this is part of our day-to-day, where, for example, if I registered in San Luis Obispo County as Elaina Marie Cano, and then in a different county, I left out my middle name. But all the other information is the same. We get this screen that comes up. It's a part of the process, and we compare the information. And if it is a match, such as my date of birth and my last four of my social and my driver's license all match, then we consider that a match, and then we pull them into our system.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And still speaking of our voting system, there are several pre-election testing processes that we do go through. The first one being our functional testing. And basically what that does is that is just testing that the system, meaning our scanners, our ICXs, our printers, are all responding to being ballots being run through the system, and then the images that they produce are actually viewable and clean, and that all of those components are getting ready. It's kind of like a pre-logic and accuracy testing, which is the next check mark down there. But the functional testing happens prior to that logic and accuracy testing. So once we've gone through there and we see that, yes, the scanners are working, the images look clean, then we move on to the logic and accuracy testing. And what the logic and accuracy testing does is we are provided with multiple, what we call decks, testing ballots, really test ballots that that are pre-marked, so that we can run them through each one of our tabulators, which a tabulator is, if you ever come in and observe the process, they look like the scanners. So the ballots are being scanned through. There is a pattern that we have those test decks marked. So the first pattern may be all first ovals that are marked. Then once we're done with that batch, that deck, we tabulate and we look at the results, and we make sure that the results of what we just scanned equal to our expected results that we should have. There is also, so this time, for this election, we will have 70 different ballot types. For the logic and accuracy testing that we just did a couple of weeks ago, we tested over 2,400 ballots. The first deck being that first oval, The other decks were in what we call it's very complicated, but it's a LA5. So they rotate. So not all of the contest will always be that first bubble that's marked. It will go in sequential. Like the first candidate is going to get 1 vote. The second name or second candidate or the yes, no on a measure will get 2 votes. And so it just runs through these series of different type of testing that is going on as it's reading the ballots. And then at the end, when we do our report, then we again look at the results there and compare them to the expected results to make sure that our system is actually tallying the votes accordingly and reporting them out exactly as we had suspected. This process was open to the public. It is open to the public. We did have a few volunteers that came down. We are required to invite our political parties to join, any advocacy groups that would like to be here, the grand jury, the League of Women Voters, of course, and any members of the public. And so we bring them in and they can certainly watch us run these test ballots through the system. On one day we did that, and then we had these the volunteers come back, the observers come back on a following day, and that's where we sat down for about an hour and a half, and we went through the results and we explained the actual process in detail. At the end of the logic and accuracy testing and explanation with these observers, we did allow them to mark their own ballots, and we ran those through the system so that they could see that the system actually tallied their votes accordingly. We do have an election observer panel. That information was sent out to, again, various advocacy groups, the League of Women Voters, the grand jury, our political parties, and it's posted on our website. And what this election observer panel does is they're really responsible. We encourage them on election day to visit our polling places and make sure, see how the operations are going, observe that all voters are having a positive experience and they are able to vote securely and privately. And then we also ask that the panel, they are more than welcome to come and watch all of our processing of vote by mail ballots prior to election day. And that would be the scanning of the envelopes, the signature verification, the inspection of the ballots themselves prior to them being batched up and ready to be tabulated. And so they get a badge that says that they are part of the election observer panel, so that when they visit any of the polling places or when they are in our office observing our process, then we actually can differentiate, who they are. They stand out just a little bit more.
Great. So you've done all your testing, and now ballots are being issued, which I know ours came in our mailbox just at the end of last week.
Yes, yeah, and they're starting to trickle in. Again, usually it's not until about 2 weeks after we mail ballots out that they really start to come in. I think at this point we have a couple hundred, which is fantastic. But there's also this whole other process with the vote by mail ballots. Now that all voters receive their ballot in the mail, we have to have other processes now in place. Now, keep in mind that San Luis Obispo County has had 70 to 80% of vote by mail voters who have chosen to be vote by mail voters prior to this law even coming into effect. So yes, everybody gets a ballot now, but that's really in perspective of 181,000 registered voters. there were only about 20 to 30,000 that weren't already permanent vote by mail voters. So now those 20 to 30,000 voters are actually getting their ballots in the mail. So it sounds like the process has changed dramatically, and honestly, for our county, it really hasn't. We've just had to mail out additional ballots to our remaining 20 to 30,000 voters. So what does that mean? You know, there's questions that come about in regards to how do you ensure that voters don't get to vote twice? Well, our system, again, is very programmed to to be able to tell when a ballot has been, I should say the envelope first, when the envelope has been received and scanned in our office. And once we have received that, and we have scanned it through the system and it's captured the voter's signature, it automatically is flagged that a ballot has been received. So should a voter decide, okay, well, I inadvertently made an error, but I need to request a replacement ballot, and they still have a hold of their original ballot. We send them, that's okay. We send them a new replacement ballot. And if they decided to try or maybe they just didn't remember that they've already cast their original ballot and they send in that second one, we call it a first one in wins. And so no matter which ballot comes in first, it's that ballot that will then void out any other ballot that the voter has tried to turn it in. So there are safeguards in place for that. As far as being able to make sure that voters do not vote twice. And plus it is a crime, and it is something that we take very seriously and that we monitor very, very closely. So how do we tell if it is the voter? Well, we are relying that the voter who has filled out the voter registration information and has signed under penalty of perjury, that they are indeed who they are. We hope that nobody is out there doing anything fraudulently, but we do rely on the information that is received from the voter, which is why it is so important when we sign it that we're looking at not only the voter's signature when we get that vote by mail envelope back, but we're verifying that the voter's name is correct, your address is correct. You know, everything has to connect. Your date of birth, your social security number, your last four of your social. So it's not just you have a unique voter ID that's on your envelope that will tie it back, that envelope directly back to your or the voter's voter registration information. So that is how we ensure that these ballots that are being returned are indeed those of the voter that it intends to be for. Protecting the secrecy of the ballot. This goes in line with whether or not we are required to ask for voter ID. And in the state of California, we are not. It's actually in the state's constitution that states that every voter has the right to a secret ballot. And so there isn't any way that once that ballot is removed from the envelope, it is never paired up again. We don't know who votes which way. And should a voter decide to write us a letter on their ballot or sign their name on their ballot, that ballot is then set aside, and then our duplication board, which consists of 4 people, they will duplicate that voter's choice on a clean ballot so that when we scan it through the system and that image is captured, that again, there is no identifiable marks on that ballot. The two-person rule, it is required by law that we do everything in dual custody. And so anytime ballots are picked up, for example, from the mail, because we go out in teams of 2 to go collect the mail at the post office. So there's no driving around with the ballots. And our 2 staff members go out there, they retrieve the ballots and they bring them back. There is a log that they must fill out, a chain of custody log, and that goes along as well with our drop boxes. So the drop boxes have a chain of custody as well. Our chain of custody procedures and policies have to be sent up to the Secretary of State's office. They look them over, and if they have any questions or concerns, then they let us know, and then we will modify our processes at that point.
You know, I just want to add in here a little historical context. It used to be that if someone signed their ballot or affix an identifying mark, that ballot had to be voided and could not be counted. So I was so happy when the law changed to allow duplication of those, because it could become a point of contention whether a smiley face was an identifying mark and should be thrown out. It's much cleaner to be able to just duplicate those ballots and make sure that those ballots can get counted.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's see, did I have anything else? You know, one thing on the vote by mail ballots, you mentioned that you have ballot on demand printers. So I'm assuming that you print all of the ballots that get issued by your office, either over the counter or the ones that you send out. And I'm also assuming that there's control over that ballot stock, you know, because you've heard things about, well, you know, there could be just this influx of ballots that didn't even come from the elections office that are out and about. But explain a little bit about controls over the ballot stock that you use to print those ballots.
Okay, so again, a part of the chain of custody and actually a part of the certification process when we purchase the voting system, we have to have a system in place that provides checks and balances to all of our ballot stock. So all of our ballot stock is logged daily. Anytime we have to get into our supply to replenish what is in our ballot on demand printer, all of that is documented and initialed by staff. The location of where that ballot stock is located has to be under that 24-hour surveillance, and then it has to be sealed, secured with a voter evident tamper evident seal, as well as what we call a zip seal. It looks like a little zip tie with a number, and all of those seal numbers are logged and kept in a secure location as well. So at the end, at the end of the election, we do have to report to the secretary, before and at the end, I should say, we have to report to them exactly how much ballot stock, how many ballots that we are anticipating printing out. And then at the end of the election, we have to remedy that and make sure that we, at the end, balance to what the stock that we started our number at with what we've issued, with what was spoiled, and then what we have left over.
And the ballots also have like tinting and watermarks on them, correctly, so that not just anybody can print a ballot that is going to get read by your system.
That's correct. So the tint and watermark for every election, if you've ever wondered, that tint and watermark at the top of your ballots, that's provided every election by the Secretary of State's office. So it is a unique color and it is a unique imprint, the image on within that, and that is provided and printed and has to be matched with our ballot on demand printer.
Okay, thanks for those clarifications.
So polling place procedures, even though we have those that everybody goes or receives their ballot in the mail, we still have our voters who still love to go to the polling place. I myself used to love being able to vote at the polling place, and so I understand why we still have voters go to the polls on election day. The procedures are very much the same. So even though everybody receives their ballot in the mail, the law never changed for our polling place procedures. So everything there is still in place as it was even prior to the new law. So when our inspectors come and pick up their supplies at prior to election day, they are provided with a certain number of ballots for their precinct. Those ballots are verified and sealed, and we now have a system in place where they have to sign that certification or the receipt, if you will, of the number of ballots that they have received, because those ballots are already pre-printed specifically for their precinct. Not like the ballot on demand ballots. Those ballots looks like a blank sheet of paper, if you will. Ballots at the polls, of course, those are all pre-printed. As election day is going on and ballots are being issued, and if there were any spoiled and any unused, there is an inventory at the close of polls. And that's where it gets a little tricky for our poll workers sometimes, because they then have to clarify and verify, I should say, that the number of ballots that they started with minus the number of ballots that they issued or that were spoiled, and those that are unvoted, all equal the exact amount that they were issued at the beginning of the day. So there's a check and balance on that. The poll workers then sign their certificate at the end of the evening that verifies how many ballots they have left. And so then going into the no voter can vote twice again. With everybody getting a ballot in the mail, we have now a vote by mail call center. So on the rosters at the polling place, if there is a statement that's next to their name that says VBM returned, meaning vote by mail returned, that voter then has to vote a provisional ballot, because we must have already received their ballot in the mail. If it doesn't, and it just says VBM issued, and then the poll workers are to call our vote by mail call center to confirm that no ballot has been received. And at that point, if it is not, and the voter does want to vote live in person right then we immediately void out their vote by mail ballot, and then that voter is allowed to vote their ballot there at the polling place. Conditional voter registration, fairly new law within the last few years. This allows, it used to be that there was a close of registration in order to be able to vote in an election was 15 days before. And then after that, then no voter was really able to be able to vote in that specific election. Now it's changed. This conditional voter registration does allow voters to, if they were to say to come into our office, they would be able to register and receive their ballot and vote right then. At a polling place, it's similar. So if they are not a registered voter, but would like to go vote at one of their polling places, they would still fill out a provisional envelope, and the back of the provisional envelope is all the same information that is required on on a voter registration card. So the voter can then fill that information out. They would be provided with a ballot, provisional ballot. They get to go vote, put it in that big pink envelope, and then we will then process it back at our office after Election Day.
You know, Elaina, we didn't put on the slide, but maybe you can explain what provisional voting is and what other kinds of circumstances people would be required to vote a provisional ballot besides the conditional voter registration.
Sure. So the voting provisionally, it's interesting as people's perception as to it. Your vote, if you vote provisionally, your ballot isn't going to get counted, and that is certainly not the case in most situations, I should say. So why would somebody have to vote provisionally? Well, again, everybody is receiving their ballot in the mail, and everybody's name will appear on a roster wherever your precinct where you are determined to go and vote at a polling place. Your name is on the roster. So if I were to say, well, I live in Arroyo Grande, but on Election Day, I'm only in San Luis Obispo, and I'm not on the roster at this specific precinct. At that point, I'm not on the roster. The poll worker can't find me. They're going to provide me with a provisional ballot, and I will fill out the back part of the big pink envelope and vote my ballot and then submit it. And then again, all of those provisionals will come back, and then staff will then make that determination of which contest I was really eligible to vote on and which contest I was not. And if necessary, then we would have to duplicate those ballots and remove any contest that I voted on that I was not eligible for. So that's one example. I go to a polling place where I'm not listed on the roster. That's pretty much the biggest responses that we get for our provisionals is that your name cannot be found on the specific roster that you at the polling location that you're at. If you were to do conditional voter registration, I could be doing provisional ballots if I have moved or changed my address. And again, that information, it all ties back to the contest in which I am eligible to vote on, because I might not think that just moving 2 or 3 blocks away isn't really going to matter. But certainly with all the redistricting that's happened this year, neighborhoods are being split in half, and I would not be eligible to vote. So I would therefore, in certain contests, I would then be provided with a provisional ballot.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I also want to say that the call center, having been a poll worker for the last several elections, the call center has really been a godsend because, and I remember that more than half of the provisionals were because people didn't have their vote by mail ballot to return. So it just precludes all those people having to vote provisional ballots just by taking that one extra step. So that's very much appreciated by the voters as well as the poll workers that are serving them.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we're still talking about polling place procedures here. Okay,
and I may have gotten a little ahead of myself, so I apologize if I sound a little redundant here. Again, always 2 people at all times when there are ballots around. We make sure that all of our locations are staffed accordingly, and so that even though there's not a lot of people that are going to our polling places anymore, it doesn't matter. There are ballots there, and we need to make sure that they are being safe and secured, and that means that there must be 2 people with them at all times. Even when at the end of election day and the polls have closed, returning them to central count here in our main office, they're tallied and everything is put together so nicely by our poll workers, and they are driven in a vehicle with 2 people even transported from the polling place to our collection center, or if they drive directly into to our office here on Monterey in San Luis. Always 2 people again with those ballots, and then those sealed ballots come back here. The unvoted ballots, they are then sealed in their boxes. And then all other materials like the roster, because that is important voter information as well that we don't want to be left behind. All of that is coming in dual custody and brought back to our office.
So now election day is over. Big sigh of relief. Does that mean your work's done, right?
No. So this is really when the fun really begins. There's so much that happens after election night. For the next 30 days, we have 30 days to do our canvas. And what are we doing? What's taking so long? How come we don't have results for all ballots by the time we leave on election night? Well, there's a lot of things that we have to verify. Some of that I already explained, such as the provisional ballots and making sure that all of the information that we have on those provisional envelopes are inputted into our system, that we have verified everything, that perhaps we've duplicated those ballots. All of that is happening during the canvas period. It's interesting because this past election in June, we were having a lot of concerned citizens keep asking, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking 30 days really? And we, in the last, I want to say 8 elections, only twice did we not hit that 30 days. So maybe we certified 24 days after the election, and perhaps it was because it was like a smaller version of a special election or something like that. But we typically take all 30 days to certify the election results. And again, it is going through to make sure that every last ballot is counted. So even your vote by mail ballots, we now can accept vote by mail ballots so long as they are postmarked on or before election day. We can receive those 7 days after the election. Then as we are going through and we are capturing the signatures and verifying the signatures, if there is no voter signature or the voter signature does not match, we are required by law to send the voters a cure letter. They then have up to 2 days before we certify to return that letter to us, so then we can cure the issue and process their ballot. Then we go through the whole process of opening it up, separating it out, inspecting it for any ambiguous marks, any identifiable marks, anything that may have spoiled the ballot, and then to bundle those up in batches and be ready to count. So we do that whole vote by mail process throughout this 30-day canvas period. And again, we're looking at those provisionals, and in the process of the canvas, we then do the 1% manual tally. So what does that mean? So the 1% manual tally is it is pulling at random 1% of the vote by mail ballots that were received in prior to election day in the semi-official canvas. Semi-official canvas being before election day, official canvas being the Thursday, typically the Thursday after the election is kind of our where the wording changes. So the 1% manual tally is 1% of the vote by mail ballots that were received during the semi-official canvas, and 1% of the precinct ballots. The process is open to the public. We do post it. It's actually, our activity schedule is posted online, so you will see when exactly we will be doing, we'll be starting or beginning that process of the 1% manual tally. Most of the time, because what we have to do in that 1% manual tally is ensure that, you know, we get the 1% of the precincts and of the vote by mails. We roll a dice, if you will, until we get all the numbers for that would equal up to the 1%. If when we pull those precinct ballots, it doesn't cover every single contest that we have in this election, then we keep going. So we always do more than the 1% of the manual tally. Once we've achieved that and we've pulled all the ballots that cover all of the contests, then we have a manual tally board that consists of 4 people that sit and manually tally every single contest on that ballot. So when we do that, it takes a significant amount of time. As you can imagine, it's a lot slower when we have a group of 4 doing it as opposed to running it through the system. So once that manual tally is completed, those results are then compared to the system's results. And once those have compared, then we know that our system still is doing the logic and accuracy, if you will, and counting our votes accordingly. In addition, we do a post logic and accuracy test. If time allows, it's not required by law, but we do try and fit that in if we have time allowed at the end of the canvas. So we've received everything is processed and done. We will do another logic and accuracy test like we did at the beginning prior to counting ballots. We'll do that same process at the end just to make sure that one last time that the system is still the exact same way that it was programmed to start with in the beginning.
Thanks, Elaina. I just want to say that when I was the county clerk, that 1% manual tally, was always a great thing that you could say the machines are working exactly like we tested them to work and counting all the ballots correctly. And it was always a big relief when you could finish that 1% manual tally, along with all the other work that went into the election.
Yeah.
So we appreciate so much your willingness to join us today. It's got your websites up there as well as your email, but I'm going to stop sharing now and then open up the Q&A and see if we have any questions. And that's interesting because I'm not seeing my Q&A. So maybe Ed can help me out here.
I can see the chat room, and at this time, there are no questions from the audience.
Yeah, I can see chat, but I can't see Q&A. And that's where we ask them to put in questions. So if anybody out there has questions that you put in the Q&A that I can't see, then put them in chat, I guess. Shouldn't there be a Q&A? Huh. Stumped. You're stumping me now. So anybody have any questions, or did Elaina do such a great job that she precluded any questions from anybody that you might have? Or maybe, like, as I always said, when you start explaining the whole process to people, sometimes it will put them to sleep because there's so much minutia that goes into everything that has to happen with an election. So hopefully we haven't put our participants to sleep.
Elaina, I have a question for you.
Okay.
If there is a strategy to increase the personal attendance on election day, and we go back to where it was in the past. How will that impact the counting of the votes?
So if I understand your question, if more people went to the polls instead of return their vote by mail ballot, what would the impact be to our office?
Correct.
I don't believe that there's going to be much of an impact at all. You know, I mean, the process of issuing out vote by mail ballots happens long before election day. And so our process is for election day, whether we receive, you know, one ballot or 100,000 ballots on election day, you know, we count and process as we always would. You know, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other how voters vote, as long as they vote. And so, you know, we already have both of our processes in place. And so for me, it wouldn't matter one way or the other. By 30 days after the election, every eligible ballot will be counted.
Yeah, and Elaina, just speaking to that a little bit, it actually, you know, if people come in and surrender their ballots, or we go through the vote center, all of those ballots on election night get counted without any additional processing. So in terms of if 20,000 people want to vote at the polls and not turn in those vote by mail ballots on election day, then at least it saves having to count 20,000 ballots after the election. It was always that, you know, that hard, you know, thing. We want people to vote however they want to vote, but it takes more time with the vote by mail ballots than it does with those that go to the polls, because you can count all those on election night.
Certainly, which is why, you know, I mean, ballots go out 29 days ahead of election day. So we have, you know, we've got these 4 weeks basically prior to election day that, you know, assists us in that processing part. It's when, you know, as closer to the election day as we get, then of course, you know, we're then doing provisionals and all the other follow-up from election day. So yes, it certainly does on election night, but there's still going to be processes that need to be happening throughout the canvas anyways. So, you know, again, for me personally, we're prepared either way to receive an influx of, you know, polling place ballots or vote by mail ballots.
I have another question for you. How much was the timeline to count all the votes affected by the 2-page ballot in the past election?
Meaning, did I get extra time to count?
Or how much time did it take as opposed to past elections?
Again, we have a deadline to complete everything in 30 days. So I don't know. I mean, so if you think about it, it was a 2-card ballot. And in total, it was probably the most ballots that we have run through our system, which I think came out to about 176,000, because only 86,000 or 80 something thousand ballots were returned. So when you double that to 176,000, our system, we have 6 tabulators. And so we will get them up and running. I don't think we ever run 6. We might run 4 at you know, at high peak times. But really, if need be, we would put online those other 2 and vote for them. So yes, we counted a lot more ballots than we ever have, ballot cards, I should say, with the 2-card ballot. But again, it was, we increased the tabulators.
Did it cause problem? I mean, additional time to remove those ballots from the envelopes and to get them ready for counting as well?
Yeah, just because of the sheer number, again, that 176,000 cards. Yeah, and our office is so small, and still trying to provide enough space for our election workers and members of the public or whoever is in there to observe. We really only have space for 9 people to actually do the processing. So yes, that takes a lot of time when you have a volume of 176,000 cards to go through. This election, we only have 1 card. I suspect it'll be the last election that we will have a 1 card ballot, because the governor just signed the law that will require us to print additional information on all propositions, state propositions, which should include those names of the people that are in support of or in opposition to each one of the propositions. So it's going to increase the amount of information that is in the voter information guide, but it'll be on the ballot, which is going to push the limits. You know, we can't have a 2-foot ballot. We can't have a 24-inch ballot. So I'm suspecting that more often than not, that we will have to go to a 2-card ballot from here on out.
Have we seen a marked increase in registrations since the last election?
No, not. It's been pretty steady right now. We're holding at about 181, 182. So in comparison to June, I don't know what it was prior to that, but for this year, we're holding about the same.
So I don't see any other questions. Ed, did you have any other questions for Elaina?
Exhausted my questions.
Before we let her go back to her real job, that's she got a little.
This is my real job.
Yeah, I know.
This is the best part of my job.
That's right.
Thank you, Elaina.
Shut your door. Let the rest of the world go by outside your door. Well, we thank you very, very much for joining us. And we really appreciate your time. And hopefully the people that participated have learned a lot about what really takes place and how much security and just so much attention to detail that it takes to conduct the election.
Well, thank you for having me.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.